Sylosis, probably the first album of this year that you guys have really wanted me to touch base on and have been talking about it for a couple of months. The new Manson, yeah, you guys are asking if I was going to do it, and obviously I did, considering we do have a review for that album already. But this is the one that you guys really approached me with a lot of expectation, with a lot of excitement. And so here we are in 2015, and here we are actually a week removed from the release of Dormant Heart, but based around the circumstances, here we are right now talking about Dormant Heart. Now, Sylosis is a band that's gotten a lot of attention on this channel. This is a band that for a long time I hadn't touched, and you guys encouraged me to definitely do that. In fact, it was more like peer pressure. I feel like you guys secretly gave me crack. Sylosis is a group that could be listed under many different subgenres. Thrash metal, death metal, progressive metal. Some people may even go so far as to say it's progressive metalcore. Isn't that something you're just hearing all the time anymore? The progressive being thrown in front of everything. Progressive deathcore, progressive metalcore, progressive thrashcore, progressive death metal. It just seems like it's a blanket term. It seems like it's a term that's being used whenever a band is willing to, go outside the lines a little bit. Almost as though people who, really juxtapose music need to have that extra additional term in there based around the fact that maybe a band does that once or twice on an album. But this is one that actually would make a little bit more sense, but I would actually stick with this band just being a flat-out heavy metal band. They definitely exhibit a lot of great things that the heavy metal genre really offers to a listener. It's something where the blanket term works just fine. So on this near hour-long album, the one thing that you have to agree with whenever it comes to this release is that it definitely has an epic feel. It definitely has a very strong, tight-knit base to it. This is something where the musicianship certainly ties together the music itself very well. Those people who call this death metal are perhaps being a little bit overly nice to the album, considering whenever you think of death metal, you think of the more traditional stylings of a Cannibal Corpse or a Morbid Angel, and we're nowhere near that level of intensity on this disc. It's definitely got a lot more melody to it. This is instead one that sizes up a little bit better with some of the groove stylings of Pantera that's given a little bit of a seismic, overwash or a seismic, changeover, and it's instead one where the band's able to collect themselves and deliver high intensity, only doing so with very passionate music in the background, whether it be aggressive or whether it be a little bit more recessed. And this is an album that definitely possesses both of those. It's one that's able to tone it down a little bit, and it's one that's also able to really be very aggressive and forward-thinking. So that mix definitely gives Dormant Heart already some great credibility going in. Whenever it comes to the strength of the songs, it's definitely something, somewhat of an ear catcher. It's one where once you put this album on, it's very difficult to tear yourself away from it. It's one where if you're thinking, well, I'll just sample a couple of tracks before I have to go to work, or before I have to go meet my girlfriend, or before I'm going to go in the other room and take a shit, you're going to find yourself holding your shit in for a little longer, or, perhaps your girlfriend has to wait a little, longer than anticipated, and you might be late for work. It's definitely one that maintains itself. It's one that's able to adjust the pacing just enough in order to really keep and maintain your attention. Whether it be the opener, which is probably, actually is the shortest track on the album at just under 3 minutes, or whether it be other such tracks such as the self-titled or Overthrown, this is definitely a disc that showcases its diversity very, very well, and that is something we need to talk about. One thing that I've always stated on this channel in the 5 to 6 years now that I've been doing this is that the last track on an album is meant to be different. It's meant to be an experiment. It's not something that's really always supposed to be that strong anchor that maintains and cements an album's status as a legend. In fact, at some points, if you actually just continue to do the same thing you're doing on the rest of the album, it can be the death knell. The last track is one where you definitely should kind of go out and do something a little bit different. And we know that Sylosis has the capability and has the potential to write lengthy and very thought-provoking music. It's something that's been proven in the past. And on this album, we see tracks that typically range within the 4 to 6 minute range, most often sticking at right around 4.5 to 4 3/4 minutes. So whenever we get to the last track, whenever we get to Quiescent, or Quiescent, I'm terrible with language, as if you couldn't tell. Why am I a reviewer? 9 minutes and 2 seconds. Immediately, a couple thoughts occur to you whenever it comes to the remainder of this album, whenever it comes to what you've heard prior to this. The first thing that you're thinking is that it's going to be aggressive, there's going to be some silence, and then there's going to be a secret track. It's a simple formula, it's been done by many in the past, and will no doubt be used and enforced by many in the future. But instead, we get a very soft, a very harmonious introduction. We get something that's dealt with a very straightforward, very acoustic, almost cinematic style, with a soft voice, with one that's maintained very cleanly and almost has a bit of a feel of desolation or atmospheric destruction to it. It's one that feels like it's very much trying to grip at you. It's trying to get you right here, right in those feels, right in the feels department, and it's slowly encasing your heart within your hands. It's one that is also able to turn it up and dial it up. This is a song that certainly is able to move in waves and get to that crescendo, to get to that high point, to get to that point of a little bit more aggression, to that Sylosis sound that you've heard throughout the course of the remainder of the album. Almost as though this is a song in 3 parts, a triptych rather of sorts. One that certainly is meant to elementize various ideas and combine them together very nicely. And then, of course, the soft and the harmonious, almost flowery or fluttery outro that you get with this takes you right back to perhaps that inner strife, that melancholy that you felt whenever the track first started. Those tracks like that, the ones that are conceptually and physically different, those are the ones that transform albums into really great experiences. It's the thing that actually helps to morph an album into maybe an average or an above average listen to something that's definitely worthy of future consideration. This album maintains your attention very well. It's one where the flow certainly is able to captivate. This is also one that, as I mentioned previously, does have enough diversity in order for it to not ever feel as though it's getting stale. It's instead an album that's able to work conceptually when it needs to, with whatever sound needs to be delivered. It's not one where you feel overly saturated by one presence. You don't feel overly saturated by aggression, and you don't feel overly, dulled down by something that's a little bit lower key. You don't feel as though you're ever getting too much of one thing. Because you know what they say about too much of a good thing. It's exactly what it is. It's too much. That's what happens with overdoses. Overdoses are too much of a drug addict's good thing. But this is an album that's able to really balance those two things, those two sides of Sylosis, the progressive, the harmonious, with the more aggressive, the thrashy and the death metal side, and combine them together very, very nicely, and they have learned throughout the course of a couple of albums how to balance it and balance it well. I would give Dormant Heart a very, very strong number. I would give it an 85 out of 100. And considering we've reviewed 2 albums, guess what? This is your album of the year of 2015 for probably about, 15 seconds, but you never know what will happen. This is a great disc. This is one that I highly encourage. And one thing I'm pissed about is the fact that we didn't get any of these in my store. I'm really upset by that. I'm still waiting just in case maybe there's, a waiting period or, whatever. And I'm starting to think that our company just didn't buy it. And it's starting to piss me off. I definitely need to get my hands on a copy of this that isn't just a promo copy. And you guys definitely need to get your hands on a copy of it as well, because this is an album that is well worth the entire experience. But with that being said, it has been a week and a half. Most of you probably already do have the release. And I want to know from you, what did you think about Dormant Heart? What do you think about Sylosis? What do you think this is for their career? Is this something that's stamping them into the elite of this time? Or is this just another album that showcases that they're a competent band, but perhaps haven't made that leap yet? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget, for more reviews like this one, subscribe, like, do all that other fun shit. It's something that I'm forever and always thankful for. coverkillernation. It's good to be back. I'm still recovering, even though this is like the 3rd video since the comeback, but it's really good to be back, and once again, I'm eternally thankful. Eternally. I'm eternally and apparently internally grateful for your patience. Thanks. Have a good one.